Hey everyone, and welcome back to Token Talk. Now, as we've talked about in the past, we do usually tend to talk about a lot of smaller altcoins that have done relatively well recently, and other altcoins that are kind of relatively new to the market, right? I know, Sui has been kind of a mainstay on the channel. ICP has done relatively well. Jasmy's one that's done well. Casp was another one that's done pretty well. These types of kind of small, more speculative coins, usually they do pretty well, during these bull markets, and which is really, really great. One thing that I want to talk about is, from a crypto vet, kind of take it from me and kind of learn from my mistakes in the past. You really want to be quite careful when we start to get towards the top of this market. And so this is something that maybe is not necessarily super applicable right now today, but it's something that I'd like you guys to think about kind of as we start to kind of climb up the chart, and it maybe gets to the point where things look like we might be seeing kind of like a blow off top or something like that happening here. And so what I want to do is I want to go and talk about kind of a very often underused crypto metric that most people in retail do not use at all, and they get wrecked because of it. And so anyway, without further ado, let's go on and kind of check that out. So first thing I want to go into before we get into that though is the crypto bubbles, just to kind of get a sense of where we're at in the market. And obviously other than SPX, DYDX, and Ape, like there's a couple really small reds here and there, but overall it's a pretty solid green day in the market. Everything kind of moving up by a relatively similar percentage. So that's pretty good overall. Nothing too much more to say here. Everything otherwise is looking pretty good. I mean, overall green day in the market. And so what I want to show you also is just looking at the Bitcoin chart. What we can see here, Bitcoin has very consistent, or very clearly broken out of this descending channel, which is fantastic news. It does look like we might be potentially starting to see a pullback coming here soon. We are kind of getting towards the top of the RSI, and then I think we might be pulling, maybe hitting the top of this, or at least maybe this support or this support. I think somewhere in here we will see hit, because it looks like the election odds are kind of trending more in favor of Trump. I think we might be starting to see, given that he is like the consensus pro crypto candidate, I think kind of the odds of him potentially winning, we might, this run up, we might be seeing people starting to try and front run that narrative if it does actually happen. And so I think that's why we might be seeing this. Also, we are in October. This also could be kind of another result of that. So, overall things are looking pretty good. The market is looking strong. And so with this, typically what has happened in the past is Bitcoin leads the run up. Once Bitcoin starts to top out, now of course, we still do need to break all-time highs before any of this realistically starts to happen. But once Bitcoin starts to top out, there is 101 different Bitcoin price predictions, and that is not what this video is. But typically, it's whether it's 100 or 110 or 120, 150, whatever it is, Bitcoin will eventually start to top out. And then usually what starts to happen is that's when the alts really, really start to run. What we can see so far is with, Sui's my first example. I'll bring in a couple others, but Sui's kind of the first one just because they're one that has done really, really well. And I'll show a couple examples from past cycles so we can kind of see how it ends, right? And what we can see is, before kind of Sui's initial run up, we saw a kind of a pullback from its release at about $1.40, moving back all to about 38 cents, and then we saw another pump to about $2, and then another pullback to about 53 cents ish, and then now we're sitting at $2.13, but we had the recent all-time high of $2.34 that came in. Ultimately, all this to say that we're sitting in a market cap of about 5.8 billion. And if we look at the crypto market caps overall, that puts us at number 22. However, if we look at the diluted market cap, we can see that this actually pushes us all the way up into the top 10, right above Dogecoin. So it would actually be the number 9 coin in terms of market cap if we were to look at the fully diluted market cap. Now, this is something that is usually very dangerous for retail crypto or new crypto users, particularly if this is your first cycle. Maybe even if this is your second cycle, if you weren't really too actively involved in your first one. And so this is something I kind of wanted to spread the word on, just so you guys can always be keeping an eye out for this as we start to get to what potentially could be the top of the market. I don't think we see that probably within the next 3 months on the short term, maybe even up to a year on the long term. And so, but this is something that I think you always should be keeping in mind. And so what we can see here is, obviously the fully diluted valuation is indicative currently of at least a top 10 coin. I would say at this point in time, that's probably pretty unrealistic for Sui, right? I know that they're proving, some of these scaling issues and a lot of this stuff that, kind of solves crypto. but it's not totally like stress tested or proven, and it hasn't like, this is its first cycle for all intents and purposes, right? Like it hasn't seen a bear market yet, and usually cryptos get really beat up in a bear market. And so we've got a couple that we could look at. Solana, great example. We can see right now, Solana for all intents and purposes has kind of been the winner of this cycle so far. Even just in the past year, it went from $29 to $169. However, if we look at Max though, I mean, it was 50, 60 cents, and then it sees this ridiculous run all the way up to like a high at $250. And then we see this run all the way back down to sub $10 at its lowest point, which is insane. Now, some of you may say, oh, well, this is partially due to FTX, and FTX like made it worse. I think that's fair. And this is realistically when we saw this drop kind of from here to here. And I also think kind of when we saw this drop from here to here. But even if you look at this, $80 or like $30, these are still like almost 90% pull. Well, this is like 67%, and this is like an almost 90% pullback from its local top. So, I mean, still massive, massive gains given back trying to hold this through a bear market. Now, if we also look at like Cardano is another great example. We can see right from the beginning, its first cycle, it goes from 2 cents up to like $1 and like 13 cents or something like that at its top. And then it comes all the way back down to like 3 cents at its lows. So, giving back basically almost all of the gains that it saw in its first run. Another more like the main example you could say is Ethereum, right? Same thing with Ethereum. I mean, we're gonna have to be going back a couple cycles, right? But in 2017, it went from basically like $8 to $10 all the way up to like 1,400 and then back down to sub $100. So again, basically all the gains that it made, you were still up 8 or 9x if you got in, at this point, but still, I mean, massive pullbacks from where we saw at the local tops. And so this is something that is like tale as old as time, right? This is not new. This is not unique. This is just kind of what happens in these projects' first bear markets. And so what I'm saying is like, this is not at all to say like you should not invest in SUI. I do think SUI actually will probably be one of the greatest winners, if not the greatest winner of this cycle. It would not surprise me if we saw a $50 billion market cap. It would not surprise me if we maybe saw a $100 billion market cap. But again, that's like if it is like the winner and it's like the one that does the best. I think that's possible, right? And if that does happen, then we also have to look at the fully diluted valuation. That would indicate a $500 billion market cap. Now, even if you think it's worth $500 billion, well, that's just great, right? If we look at the circulating supply, it is 27% of the total supply is actually circulating. So all through the bear market, SUI has unlocks going up to 2030. So all through this bear market, all through the next bull market, all through the bear market after that, there are going to be unlocks and sell pressure from people trying to dump their SUI coins who have been in for years and years and years. And so this is something that I wanted to point out because no matter how much conviction you have in this project, it's very, very likely that it will come down 90% from highs after this bull market. Not guaranteed. The past is like no indicator of future like returns, right? This is not financial advice, none of that type of stuff. But from what we've seen historically, almost universally, this is going to happen. So anyway, this is just something that I want to share with you guys, especially if you are kind of new to crypto and this is your first run. This is something that I wanted to share just because usually new retail investors are the ones that get hit the hardest because they don't really understand some of these finer metrics. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful. If it was, please do give us a like and subscribe. It really, really does help us out. Also, we do have a MARGEX link in the description below. If you are wanting to trade leverage with no KYC or VPN and up to a $10,000 deposit bonus, we have that in the description below as well. Also, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, anything like that, please feel free to leave a comment. I do try to read and respond to all of my comments. And so if you have any, I'm happy to look, or I will be looking at them, and I'm hoping to respond and give you some hopefully good feedback or insight or whatever you're needing with your comment. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.